All right, Scavengers, welcome to the 6 Scale Scavengers Hot Toys podcast focusing on Marvel and Star Wars. This is Brian Fontaine, joined as always by my co-host and good friend, Chris Letty, aka Vintage Viewport. Chris, we made it to episode 15. Feels kind of milestone-y, but not really. I don't know. I like seeing the numbers that keep going up.
Yeah, I know. 15. Who would have thought?
Well, yeah.
We hoped. We
did hope. So, Chris, kind of the theme of this episode, and I don't know if you remember in the trailer for Star Wars The Force Awakens when we overheard Snoke talking and saying that there had been awakening.
Can you feel
a lot? Yeah, a lot has happened in between episode 14 and 15, and I think we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about that, and a lot of it, it's just weird. I feel like I evolved as a Hot Toys collector, and it sounds weird, and we'll get into that as we go on. And my son's been watching a lot of Pokemon lately, Chris, on Netflix. I don't want to say like I mega evolved or something like that, but not to get all completely nerdy on everybody here, but we'll definitely be talking about that throughout the podcast. And Chris, speaking of the podcast, you and I got together last week, and you and I hadn't seen each other in person probably in a couple months. And that might sound weird to everybody because we're in the same state. We live about an hour away. We're good friends. We talk practically every day through text messages or Messenger or on the group or email or whatever it is. And we've been not putting it off for a while, but Chris, we needed to kind of just put our heads together about the podcast because, as you mentioned, it's just exceeded any expectations we've had. And there's just a lot of stuff to kind of consider that we just really didn't ever thought we'd need to. We just thought we were going to be a little bit of a, a little podcast with a niche, lucky to have a couple listeners every time out. And the downloads now are just incredible. The community that has kind of rallied around the podcast and embraced the positivity that we just kind of share, the enjoyment of Hot Toys collecting and collecting in general, the friendships and everything that's there. So that was pretty good to kind of connect, and good to know that we're kind of on the same page. But I think kind of the theme of that little meeting that we had, other than me getting a sneak peek of the feature figure review that we're going to be talking about today, because you brought over Loki and I got a firsthand look at it. Pretty cool in my estimation. It's growth. And when we looked at, especially, we talk about it often with our Facebook group that we've created, 6 Scale Scavenger Collectors. And as of we record on February 13th here, we're up to 90 members, and that's just incredible. And we're not trying to be like one of the main collecting groups for Hot Toys on Facebook. We're just trying to have a community around the podcast. And a lot of the questions that we ask of people that want to join are just, answer some really basic questions about the podcast. Just show that you're a listener and you want to be engaged with the other people there. And we kind of came to the conclusion, Chris, that we needed some help. That was really, we're like, you and I both work full time. We both have families. We do this in our spare time. We've had somebody in our group recently say like, gosh, you guys put in a lot of work. And I think our comment to that was, our response to that was, it is a lot of effort, but it's not really work, because if you're enjoying doing it, then it really shouldn't be considered work. So long story short, we needed help. So we can't be everywhere. And one of the things that you and I kind of quickly agreed on was we needed some help in the group. So we decided to come up with a moderator team. And Chris, I'm sure as you can attest to this, like that just the concept of that just blew my mind to say, yeah, I think we need that.
Yeah, we needed help, guys. It was, a little bit tough for us to pull pull moderator duty all the time. And not that there was a ton of stuff going on that needed that, but it's just nice to have help. And, we kind of looked at who was, pretty active in the group and that sort of thing. And so it was tough. It was a tough decision initially, but there's going to be opportunities to add more to the team. But who did we bring along here?
So, and these individuals also have not been shy with sharing their thoughts and ideas with Chris and I, and we certainly appreciate that. So, our inaugural moderator team, we have Roy in the Netherlands, we have Matt in San Diego, and then we have Steve in Colorado. So not only do we have really 3 active members there, but we also have a lot of different time zones covered, which is also pretty cool. So as you mentioned, Chris, that may not be, that's just to get us started. It's great to just have them involved. And now that they're even more involved, getting more ideas, and pretty excited about where some things could go from here. And, the podcast will always remain one of the mainstays of the community we've created. We're not going away anytime soon. It will be Chris and I. We're looking to add more content to our website, which is exciting. And one thing that Steve is going to be leading the charge on is every other week, or essentially the week that we don't release a podcast episode, and we're on a every 2-week release schedule-ish at this point, is hosting a collector hangout through our YouTube channel, selecting panelists from our community. And that's going to be cool because we've done live videos in our Facebook group where you or I, we've taken a turn doing that, bringing one person on at a time, but it's still a one-on-one conversation. And we have people in our community that are able to chat and also jump in. And we try to bring in a few people per live stream, but this will allow a panel of 6, 7, maybe up to 10 people all being able to just kind of have that collector talk that I think a lot of us crave, that we're in such a niche collecting focus here that nobody wants to talk about hot toys. Well, we're going to have an outlet to be able to do that once every 2 weeks. So I'm really excited to see what Steve will be able to do with that. We're batting around some names at this point, so to be determined as of us recording this podcast. But pretty excited and glad to have all 3 of those guys, officially on the team per se. And as I said, like when we started this thing, I think we started talking about this last June, July, about making this a reality. I'm really proud of what it's turned into.
Yeah, it's come a long way quick, and the big thing that we kind of talked about before we even started this whole project was to grow organically, or as organically as possible, and just kind of see where things go, and not try to be more than what we are and what our goals are and that sort of thing. So, to get to this point, it's been pretty awesome. And I look forward to this hangout situation where panelists can prepare, ahead of time, and kind of block out some time to join Steve and you or I and, whoever else. And just, it's just another way to grow little niche community, like you said.
All right, Chris. Well, that's enough of an intro for me. And I feel like I just did a whole lot of talking, but
just a bit.
Just a bit. I like to talk. That's why we have a podcast. All right. Anyways, so as we get the episode officially kicked off here, Chris, we're going to be covering news as we usually do. And boy, do we have some news to cover. We have a pretty exciting collection update, I think, because I'm biased. A great topic to cover. And this is a topic that we covered, Chris, I believe this is back in episode 10?
Yeah.
So we're going back to a topic we've already talked about, which is kind of neat. And I'm glad that you remembered we already talked about it because I'm old and senile. Is talking about selling accessories or selling parts from a figure that you're not displaying. Again, going back to that, what I talked about at the beginning of, there's been an awakening. And we are going to talk about the feature figure that I previously had already mentioned was Loki from Thor Ragnarok, MMS 472, figure that released at the end of November 2018. I wouldn't say we're in kind of a lull right now, Chris. It's just we want to get back to some of those figures we kind of missed because there was just so many at one time. And it's a really good figure that I didn't want us to miss the opportunity to talk about because we're going to start getting quite a few here pretty soon, as we'll talk about here in the news.
Yeah, it's crazy. There were a number of figures. Like, that's why we did a double review last time around, try to bunch in some of these releases from late last year. I know a lot of reviewers try to get stuff, right out the gate and get the reviews out right away. We kind of, that's not really our style. We'll just do whichever figure we think might be relevant, or just a figure that we think needs some attention, needs a review.
All right, Chris. So we got new trailers for both Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel, and let me just say, I can't wait for these movies at this point. Literally, we're a month away from Captain Marvel. The hype train's in full effect there, and we're looking at basically 2.5 months from Avengers Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't know a whole lot about either film, and I think that is also leading to a lot of intrigue. So I think we're going to start getting, as we'll talk about with our first news item on our agenda, we're going to start getting figure previews and pre-orders that are up. So, Chris, February 8th might as well just be called Captain Marvel Day because day one pre-order, baby. Pretty exciting. It was funny. So this would have been last Friday. Yeah. And I ended up doing a live, kind of, not really live because it ended up being later in the evening, was a reaction kind of video to my thoughts about the release of the figure coming out, just because I knew that we would be recording kind of mid-week, and not that it would be old news at that point, because I love the fact that with Hot Toys news, it doesn't happen all that often, so you can kind of reflect on it, comment on it, react. And it's funny because I remember when the first trailer kind of dropped, you and I on the podcast kind of speculated on what kind of some of our thoughts would be. Mm-hmm. And then I know our community got involved too. We had a feeling that there would going to be a standard and a deluxe, and there was. I don't think we're exactly right on what came with what. I think I went back. I must have said I think the deluxe version was going to have the helmeted version.
Yeah. We
had a feeling there would probably be a leather jacket. I don't think either of us thought Goose the Cat was going to be involved, but I just, the day that it released, not that I was having like a bad week at work, but it was just really long, and it was a nice thing to wake up early in the morning. I know you usually wake up earlier than I do in the morning, and you're usually either letting me know about what's already out there or in our Facebook groups. Yeah. And it's just really cool to be able to have something like that kind of just give you a little bit of pep in your step to kind of end a week. And as I mentioned, Chris, we've been looking forward to this release day for a while.
Yeah, it was a nice, pleasant surprise drop in there for us. Yeah, we'll continue to talk about this figure, as the months go on. It just looks like an awesome figure, honestly. The prototype of the figure is just, there's not much more that I could ask for, honestly, from the figure, from what I see. And the question is what other characters do we get from Captain Marvel? Is it a one-shot deal, or is it, do we get some friends to join her crew? I'm sure we'll see those in the next month or so.
Yeah, I think my hunch is we're going to get 2. Well, 3 technically if you consider the deluxe and the standard. And I think it's just going to be another version. I think we're going to get her in her green like Kree outfit. I'm not sure we're going to get a young Nick Fury. I'm not sure about any of the villains or anything. It just screams to me like this is maybe a movie that they're only going to do a few figures from and really kind of focus on Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, it's kind of it's tough because initially for Black Panther, we were thinking, all right, we're only going to get Black Panther and Killmonger, but then they dropped Shuri and T'Chaka. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It'll be fun to speculate. I would love, we'll just start this now. I would love to see Talos, the Skrull that Ben Mendelsohn plays, because we just need more villain Hot Toys. And then from there, I mean, Jude Law's character or a young Nick Fury, those are definitely possibilities. So I don't know. I can't wait.
Yeah, so we're looking at the deluxe version, Chris, going for 266, and the standard is 243.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think two good price points. So the deluxe version it's essentially the same figure, but it does come with Goose the Cat. It comes with a leather jacket, and it comes with extra blast effects from her arms. So, for the price difference, I don't think it's terrible. I think, Chris, just correct me wrong, we'll talk about our collection update. You and I both have gone for the deluxe figure, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and I almost thought doing something as crazy as getting the deluxe and the standard so I could display one with the head sculpt and then one with the helmeted hair. And speaking of hair, Chris, like sculpted hair,
Dang.
I'm so happy about that. I know Andrew in our group that was the first thing he pointed out is
thank the maker.
Her hair would have been really difficult to do with rooted hair, and just because of like kind of the curls that she has, it's a little bit
and the
tougher
tone
to do.
And everything.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit tougher to do than like say what they've been able to do with Black Widow. But I wouldn't fault anybody for going for the standard over the deluxe. And I said in our live stream, the one concern I've got about the leather jacket and about posing it with it on long term is the color bleeding on it. And some of the figures that we've gotten from Hot Toys over the years, sometimes around the neck area, there can be bleeding from basically the material can bleed in. My Captain America stealth version I have from Winter Soldier, if you pull the neck back, it's all blue underneath. It's just because of staining. And I don't know. We don't know exactly the type of material that we have for her outfit at this point. You and I have kind of both speculated it looks a little bit more sturdy than, say, the Iron Spider is. It does look very similar. And kind of as I pointed out on our live stream, it does look like there's an underarm gusset that kind of allows for more arm articulation. And I don't think it's going to be as constrictive where like the Iron Spider suit is definitely like all one piece. It's kind of hard to tell from the images if that is exactly, in fact, the case. It does look like it. So if you're going to get this and think like you're going to do some super ultra dynamic poses and stuff, we don't know the type of material of the suit. And I just would, based on what you and I know about Hot Toys, this isn't one that I would want to leave in that position for any length of time.
No, it's going to be one that, you'll probably be able to mess around with it, get some great pictures for photography, and then probably try to bring it back to a more museum pose or one with just a little bit of dynamic stance, not crazy. But yeah, the thing is, like, I've heard people talking already about using the jacket and the regular head sculpt for a custom, that sort of thing. So again, we'll see where things go with that, but that's always a possibility. But as far as what they've given you here, I mean, without seeing the movie, there's nothing else I could ask for. I mean, we got the mohawk with the light up hair and regular hair. So that's really cool. And then there's not much else that I would ask for.
I mean, the colors on this is just pop.
Man.
I mean, this is definitely going to be a highlight of a lot of people's collections. And I haven't even seen the film, and I can already anticipate, Captain Marvel being one of those figures that I'm just going to gravitate towards and I don't. It's kind of early to say like being a focused collection, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, especially if I've got concerns about my two favorites in the MCU and their status after Avengers Endgame at this point. So I might need a new foil to collect.
Say it ain't so.
I know. Yeah. So we'll see. It definitely, I mean, that just adds to the intrigue of, Avengers Endgame, and we don't really even know anything about it at this point. So both of them are up for pre-order in Sideshow already. It looks like it's going to be an October to December release. Could it come out a little bit early? I think we have to consider that as a possibility. So I will say, if you're like us and we like to do budgeting and extending out the payment plans for as long as possible, just to spread out the payments over time, is just know that it could, I mean, there could be a possibility that we could get it in late August, September too. So, if you're budgeting out for the year, I think we have to kind of consider the fact that we just may continue to get Marvel figures earlier than expected.
Seems to be the trend, man.
So another really cool release, Chris, finally, and these next two that we're going to talk about, because they were teased in Hot Toys kind of quarterly promotional image where we knew that these things were coming out soon. We did get Thanos MMS 479 released at Secret Base on February 8th, that same day. I mean, last Friday was just crazy that we had not only Captain Marvel, but Thanos was just out of the blue, just was dropping. And I personally was caught off guard because I thought that because of the Chinese New Year, we were going to get a little bit of a slowdown. Secret Base is like, nah, don't worry, we got this. Ryan and our group picked it up at Secret Base, and the fact that he showed pictures of it and it had a freaking handle on it to carry the big box, I'm like, that is nuts. And this thing is huge. It's like 16 inches tall. Chris, I gotta say, just from the images I've seen and some of the video reviews, that speaking of Ryan, he got a video review out there for Thanos. It just looks incredible. And it's one of those I think I've determined I'm gonna appreciate from afar. And because I'm not getting it doesn't mean I don't think it's a good figure. It's just not really going to fit into my collection. And to be honest, I just don't have the space to display a figure of that height, because I don't have the space, or I can't sacrifice a shelf on a DTOF to accommodate a taller figure.
Yeah, that's going to be a dilemma for many, many collectors, because from what I understand, he's, I don't know, maybe about 1.5 inches, 2 inches shorter than like Age of Ultron Hulk. And anybody that tries to get him into a DTOF, you've got to bend him down so it kind of looks awkward. So he's going to have to be ducked down as well to fit into those DTOFs. But yeah, man, it's a awesome figure. Right before we recorded, I was watching Ryan's video and I watched Justin's collections review, and I just love this figure. More to come on that.
Yeah. So speaking of taller figures that probably aren't going to fit in a DTOF, just this morning we got again a figure that we knew was probably going to come out soon, was the Infinity War Hulkbuster 2.0, which is the Power Pose series PPS 005. We got the final product images today, but then also they made it available at Secret Base. There's already people that have it in hand. I know Budget Stark is a good Instagrammer to follow. He's over in Hong Kong and is getting things the day of. He's already got some great images out there. It looks like early feedback is pretty positive about it. And the one thing that I did see from his Instagram feed was the fact that there's one battery compartment. It looks like it's like 3 AA batteries, and it powers all 18 LEDs. So you don't have to do individual in the head, in the arm, in the leg, in the chest, and everything. So I think that's a pretty cool component. And to be honest, like that's something to me, as somebody that's as of yet, not really a super great poser of figures, that is very appealing to me. going back to what I just said about Thanos, though, and taller figures, and because Tony Stark didn't actually wear this armor in Infinity War, it's going to adhere to my rule of it's not die-cast, and Tony Stark didn't wear it. So
it's good. It's good to have these rules, quote unquote rules.
Rules are meant to be broken.
No,
as Gare Bear on our
oh yeah, definitely,
or promises, I should say. He's like, I'm not going to get any older figures. Yeah.
And yeah.
I just had a quick aside. Like, he was so excited the last time. I think we mentioned him twice on the podcast. And so there you go, Gare Bear. You got a couple more. I appreciate you tuning in. So
sorry, just going back to that feature of the fact that, I mean, what was it, 3 AA batteries or whatever it is? Like, just lighting up everything. I know that's a point of contention for a lot of Hot Toys collectors, where you've got to drop in the little tiny batteries in so many different compartments, and it takes 20 switches to turn on everything. It just doesn't make sense. But then the logistics of actually making that happen and having everything wired in to make it work that way on an articulated figure, it's not realistic. But with this figure, it just makes perfect sense. And I think Steve's got this on pre-order, and I can't wait to see that in his Infinity War collection, because that thing is going to be a pretty sweet piece to cap off that line. Yeah, it looks cool. In a perfect world, I'd probably order it, but it doesn't fit my collection either.
So speaking of Infinity War, Chris, we got, as we talked about on our last episode, Doctor Strange was going to be shipping soon, and he has shipped. He didn't quite make the cutoff to be able to include him in this episode. We both have this on the way. This will probably be, we haven't talked about this yet, Chris, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be our review figure in episode 16. I'm super excited about this. Going back to just, talking about our Facebook group for a moment, there's sometimes that, people just come up with some of the best and creative stuff. And there was one morning that everybody was getting their last payments, their final payment plans were getting pulled from Sideshow, and TC, he's in the group. He's such a great guy. He's done a couple unboxing videos in our group, and just is a great member of our community. And he just had this one liner, and I told him I was going to include it in the podcast. Just, it was so good. And he had this post on our group and said, "I've never been so thrilled to pay a doctor's bill."
Oh man, ain't that the truth?
But I can't wait. I've gone back, Chris. I've looked at some of the the comparison videos. Mm-hmm. My wife and I, we just watched Doctor Strange over the weekend, and just as a quick aside, a tangent, still on Doctor Strange, but just talking about the movies for a little bit. It was never really one of my favorite MCU films, and I don't really hate any of them. It just, if I was to pick like a top 10, I'm not even sure it would have been in there before. But after seeing Infinity War and seeing Benedict Cumberbatch knock it out of the park as Doctor Strange, going back and then knowing what you know then about Infinity War, like Doctor Strange it's funny because I partially am excited because the figure's on the way, but then I'm like, this makes all so much more sense now, talking about the multiverse and the Infinity Stones. I'm like, it really is all connected here. So anyway, I'm not sure it's in my top 10. Needless to say, Chris, I'm excited about adding him to my shelf pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I can't wait for this figure to show up. Yeah, definitely. I'm right there with you as far as him being the review figure for episode 16. I know we're very Marvel heavy as of late, and I feel kind of bad for the Star Wars collectors, like Matt was saying on his live unboxing of his Luke today. Like, I'm very happy for everybody with their Marvel figures, but how about some Star Wars love? And hopefully we get that soon. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's too, is just to know that there's more in the community out there than us. And just because our collecting habits don't align with everything, and we're always going to talk about the news and anything coming out about that, even if we're not going to get the figures or not. one question you and I get a lot of the time is like, would you guys ever cover anything else? Or if there was another thing you would collect, what is it? Or, sometimes we're like, oh, why don't you guys talk about the DC stuff? We've said it before. We'll say it again. We don't hate DC. We don't hate the other things. But if I'm personally not going to collect anything, I don't want to speak, even attempt to have any speaking on authority of something. If I just know deep down, there's not a chance that I'm going to ever buy any of those things. Just to be transparent and genuine about how we do collect, because we are just everyday collectors like everybody else. We just happen to have a podcast. We talk about this stuff. I edit the heck out of it so it sounds like we're more professional than we really are. But that's really what it is. I'm not going to be out there saying how great something is if I deep down have no intention of getting it whatsoever.
No, and that's what the group's for. We don't discriminate or anything like that on the group. I mean, again, Matt unboxed a Neo figure the other day, so that any of that stuff is welcome discussion on there. We're just, if any of us sway off the path, might mention a different figure here or there, but we haven't gone that way yet.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we won't.
No.
But I mean, at 15 episodes in, I think we kind of know what we are at this point. So, Chris, is just final news item that I wanted to talk about, and only just because I've been the beneficiary of this recently, talking about Matt just joining our mod team, and he was, sharing, he's like, guys, I'm really looking for a Luke and a Han Stormtrooper. And we were like, hey, just check the groups. You never know. Say you're, in some of these groups like, Tashi or 1/6 Republic, buy, sell, trade. You're just like, hey, I'm looking for a figure I'm willing to buy. Is anybody selling? And sometimes, and I think we've mentioned this before too, sometimes somebody might have something in their collection. They're not totally sold on keeping it or not, but they don't want to go through the hassle of boxing it up, taking pictures of it, listing it, wondering if somebody's going to be interested. But if you already know you've got a captive audience, you're like, yeah, I've got one. And then that's usually when some pretty good deals could happen. And I know Matt's had pretty good luck. He got a Han recently. It won't have the backdrop, but as he said in our feed, that wasn't what he would display it with. So we got a really good deal there. And then I just happened to be perusing 1/6 Republic, and I noticed that somebody had one, a Luke, brand new, for a really good price. I tagged him in the thread, and he was able to work out a deal for that. So sometimes knowing people in your collecting circles or in a group or having a buddy, I mean, you and I have the benefit of we kind of know what each other's looking for. So if we see something and it's a good deal, we'll usually tag each other on it. Kind of at this point, we're not really chasing a lot of older stuff at this point. It's mostly now just going forward with pre-orders. But I love helping people out. I mean, that was so cool to be able to help Matt out like that. And because we're going to start getting a lot of newer figures this year, it's kind of tax return season in the United States. People are kind of have some disposable income right now to spend. You're seeing a lot of people that are listing a lot of things. I've seen personally a lot of the listings on these groups up a lot recently, and a lot of people, I've seen a lot of the same people posting a lot of things. If you're kind of Johnny on the spot, you're actually getting a really good deal. Because people are kind of, one thing I will say though, sometimes you're going to see what, I hate using the term like market price, but whatever like the going rate is for something. But sometimes, a lot of the times you'll see like figures that are in really good condition. They might as well be considered brand new, and they're like priced to sell. And they're selling within like minutes.
Yeah, they are selling in minutes. Especially, I was looking at was it You Tagged Me in the War Machine Mark II diecast? And it literally sold in like 2 minutes.
I know Darmontino was like, wow, that was fast.
It's just crazy. And then that same figure, you and I think we're both watching an auction on eBay. And I think that figure, same exact condition as the one that sold on the Facebook group, sold for it was like close to $300 on eBay, whereas opposed to, I think it was like $200 shipped or $215 shipped on the group. And it's just nuts. But a lot of it's like right place, right time. And that's what is nice about having friends that know you're looking for something, because, I might not be in a position to be perusing the groups, and you've got a free minute and you see it and you boom, I get the notification, jump on there, and might be able to get a sweet deal. So yeah, definitely utilize your friends and put out those in search of or want to buy posts on the different groups.
Yeah, and it's a good time to be looking for those things right now. All right, Chris, let's turn the page, go over to our collection update. A little bit more exciting than the last time out. I know you've been pretty busy, my friend.
Just a little bit. I don't know what the heck happened to me. I went a little crazy. So I have been saving up my Sideshow rewards for a while, and I was waiting for the right time, and as soon as I knew this figure, as soon as there was in-hand photos of it, I was going to pre-order it, and it's the Thanos figure. I jumped on that immediately after, I think, like, it was like the first image I saw of it. I didn't even
Deal.
really, yeah, I know, done. But this is the cool thing. So I was a lucky recipient of a mailer coupon from Sideshow.
Yeah, I'm not angry about that, by the way.
No, I won't rub it in or anything. And so it was $20 off anything over $100, and it had no stipulations as far as like if it had to be in stock or whatever. So I punched that code in, and then I had a gift card on there. And so when I hit checkout, I'm like, I'm using the rewards. Let's just see if this gift card goes in. Went in. I'm like, I'm probably pressing my luck, but I'll try to see if this coupon goes on in, and it went in too. So I saved quite a bit of money on the Thanos figure, basically getting him for a regular price Hot Toys figure. So I'm looking forward to that one. We'll see when he shows up. And talking about Captain Marvel, I did pre-order the Captain Marvel Deluxe.
Day one pre-order.
Oh yeah, soon to be TeePublic shirt.
If we can ever get around to making a good design.
I know, right?
I literally slapped a design together in like 2 minutes in a logo program I have.
I know. It might be just a running joke that we always say that, and it just never happens. So this one, I decided to do a payment plan on Captain Marvel, and we'll, I kind of wanted to play it out to see how things go over the summer, and maybe if it does get released early and a couple payments have hit, I'll switch it to a one-time payment to get that figure quicker. And then I also pre-ordered Iron Man Mark 7. So I'm pretty excited about that. Just an amazing looking Iron Man suit. Yeah.
And you've been talking about that one for a long time.
Yeah. And it was about the right time, because I figured with the tax return money coming in, and I just do a bunch of pre-orders at once and kind of knock it out as far as those initial deposits all hit my account at the same time. And then, not to be outdone, this one is, you kind of question this one. You're like, is this why'd you go for this one?
Is this a precursor to a larger purchase?
It might be a precursor. So I pre-ordered Iron Man Mark 43. And I love that suit by itself, but there's a little bit of a plan in place for a figure that might go along with that one. So yeah, those were my pre-orders. And then there was another little deal that happened. Do you want to initiate that?
Well, so we did have a little bit of a summit last week talking about the podcast. And of course, you hadn't seen my collecting space in a while, and I did see your eyes kind of lingered a little bit longer on one figure in particular, and kind of took note of it. And as I was going through, as I'll talk about in my update, I'm like, all right, well, I'm trying to figure out, like, I know the mod team kind of talked me out of selling any of my Rogue One figures. I know Matt specifically was like, no, absolutely do not. And I was looking around, and I'm like, it's funny because we talk about the joy collecting sometimes, and sometimes you really connect with a figure, like most recently getting the Luke Skywalker from episode 8, like that just spoke to me. It was just like, wow, that's really good. And the Black Widow figure from Civil War is, I still think it's the best Black Widow that they've done. But like for some reason when I opened it, I don't know if it was just because I got it the same day, I got like another figure or two. Like I just never got like super jazzed about it. And I don't know why, because I mean it's an awesome figure. And I know you've been looking one for a while, and I looked on eBay and I'm like, geez, these are going for a lot of money now. And I'm like, we talk about all the time too. Like sometimes it's not about getting maximum value for something, especially like, all right, I know this is something like I'm not completely sold on having in my collection. I know it's something like Chris really wants. I'm like, hey, what about this? And we kind of like price wise, and you're probably like, you probably couldn't have said yes fast enough based on what I told you for a price. Because let me just say, it was far under whatever anything on eBay was, but it was really kind of what I had originally paid for it. So it wasn't like, I'm sure it wasn't necessarily a screaming deal, but like I think it's just kind of important too yeah, I don't know, that's just kind of my side of the story.
Yeah, no, it is a figure that I wish I had. Well, there's a local store that last year, well, they still have the figure there, but last year it was at like 260, and or 250, whatever. And I'm like, oh man, I already have Winter Soldier, Black Widow. I've got Infinity War 1 coming. I'm like, I really like this figure, but I'm not going to get it. And then they did a whole price increase of everything in their store, and now it's like 350 or 360. And
I think it's 360, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh man, I should have just bought it. So it's kind of one of those ones that's lingered that I really did want. Yeah, so as soon as you started toying with the idea, I'm like, I'll take it.
Yeah, so definitely, yeah. Like we talk about all the times, like it's really kind of, it's not all about, I mean, everything is kind of about money, but then it's not always about that as well too. So I think definitely kind of a win-win, for both of us there.
Yeah, man, I do appreciate it, and yeah, I don't have it in hand yet, but we'll get together.
Yeah, obviously it's boxed up very safely for you already. So as I mentioned in our news section, I also did order the Captain Marvel Deluxe. I was toying with the idea of getting the standard version as well, just so I could have both kind of displayed. And I know Roy had kind of talked me out of getting the other one because he's like, yeah, we're probably going to get one from Infinity War. And then based on some of like the leaked artwork and stuff like that, it might be short hair version Carol Danvers. That would be a good substitute for needing to have both the figures. And this isn't as I'll talk about with my next figure, this isn't two different figures. It's just a standard and a deluxe version of it. Much like the Captain America from Infinity War was essentially all that was dubbed the movie promo one. And the standard one, it is essentially the same figure. The movie promo one just came with more accessories. So I've talked myself out of that for now. I'm not closing the door on that, Chris, but I'm kind of waiting to see. And I really wish I could remember who in our Facebook group had mentioned it. I can't remember who it was. Nick's popping in my head for some reason, but it may have been somebody else that, that like we said, they may end up doing the Kree version of that. So that might be like a New York Toy Fair or a New York Comic Con. That might be like a San Diego Comic Con exclusive type figure where it's not going to be like a mainstream one. It's kind of like a variant of it. And much like we get like concept art, Cap, Darkseid, Anakin. To me, that just screams like that's something that Hot Toys is probably going to do later this summer.
Yeah, I can see that 100%. I mean, we could I'd bet on it. I would definitely bet on it, but hopefully, don't get our hopes up too much, but I would like to see that one.
So I have my own success story about one of the buy-sell trade groups, and everybody knows that I'm a Captain America focused collector, and I've said for the longest time, I've got everything but the battling version Cap. Well, I think everybody kind of knows where this is going because I now have the battling version Cap. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes people price things to sell. I think it's always kind of important to know market price of, what things are going for in groups and eBay and stuff like that, because having that knowledge, you can, if somebody posts something and it's a figure that you might want to get, knowing if it's a good price or not almost immediately, like you almost have to sometimes make a split second decision, not as quick as like 2 minutes later on a War Machine diecast figure. But I saw this cross posted in two groups from a seller in Ohio, and it was for a brand new figure and for a price that has beat anything that I can see. And the fact that it was brand new, open for inspection. So it wasn't even had been displayed or anything. Messaged him almost immediately. I'm like, hey, it's still available. And we ended up working out a deal. I gave him basically what he was looking for because I still felt like that was, a fair price. And I am now officially complete, Chris, on Captain America figures.
Congratulations.
I feel like, not like it was the weight of, like I was ever like that stressed about it, because I was like, it's the same figure. We say all the time, we're not experts. We're just a voice, not the voice. I was completely wrong about this figure, Chris. It is different. It's not so different, the fact that when you compare it to the standard release, so MMS 350 was the figure from Civil War, air quotes, the standard version, and MMS 360 was the battling version, which up until this point, I was like, oh, well, it just has the damaged shield. It's got the claw marks from T'Challa, and it comes with the big Civil War base that I would never display. So I'm like, I don't really want to chase that. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, wait a second. I'm looking at the description, and it's not only does it have the shield that's damaged, it is the same head sculpts, but the suit is kind of battle damaged. It's more weathered. And when you compare them, and the kind of like the whitest stripes that are on his torso, on the standard version, it's a lot more clean, but on the battling version, it's a lot more dark. So now it was just kind of funny. Like all this time, I thought I was, and I wouldn't say that it's dumb or smart or anything like that, but sometimes you can kind of convince yourself that something is true when it's not, in fact, at all.
No, it's great that you found those differences out, and it justified going for the figure. And
not that I needed to justify it whatsoever,
yeah,
because I mean it was just like, like the price. I'm just like, geez, I'm like, I can't say no to that. And so yeah, I'm super excited. I've got that pose. I don't have it displayed with the base yet, and kind of as I'll talking a little bit about having some inspiration to post figures and stuff. So that's there. Now, I told Zach with Collecting Weekly I'd give him a shout out. I want to give out a shout out to Dean too, who, as I found out last week, I totally didn't even remember that he was in our Facebook page too. So, they do a great job with Collecting Weekly. And they talk about all the time, well, not all the time, they talk about customizing figures. And to me, when I see like customizing figures, it's like something like Milo would do with, painting head sculpts and stuff like that, or modifying things. But sometimes it's kind of customizing, Chris, can be kind of like kit bashing sometimes, like taking the best things of different versions of figures to kind of make like the ultimate figure. And I know Zach has been on a mission for a long time to make like the best Sebastian Shaw Darth Vader, and I think he's there. And it was Zach that had posted something in our Facebook group about kit bashing a Luke Skywalker for Return of the Jedi. It was talking about all the different things that he had done and collected different parts. And I'm like, he's got the lightsaber from Palpatine, the release there that has the lightsaber emitter on the end there. And I'm like, why didn't I ever think about just seeing if I could go out on eBay and see if somebody's selling that, like parsing it out, like we talked about in episode 10. People do that. And I'm like, $20 shipped is not terrible. So I entered a whole new world, Chris. There's been an awakening. And I have that in hand, and it came through perfectly fine. No concerns. It's not a copy at all. It's definitely the original from, the Palpatine figure. The Palpatine figure is not a figure that I would have gotten just because it doesn't really fit my collection. It's a great figure. I know our friend Paradox Nerd PJ had it as one of his top figures of last year. But to get that accessory that I really wanted without having to get the full price of the figure, I'm like, this is a whole new world now. Like, and I told Zach I was going to give him kudos for it, but it's just funny sometimes changing a perception of something or taking a small little leap of faith and then realizing like it's not that scary out there.
No, it's not. It's a slippery slope one way or the other, as we'll discuss, but it's something that will add that extra touch to your figure, and you can change up your display and that sort of thing, and just a little lightsaber hilt like that can make a huge difference. And there's lots of possibilities that you can go into with picking up different accessories. So yeah, good stuff, man.
So that kind of moves into our discussion topic. And again, we're revisiting a topic we covered back in episode 10 about wondering if it was worth it to parse out figures. Or I think originally we talked about, Chris, like you got an extra figure and then you just like break it down and sell all the different parts of it, which, you know, for some figures that maybe people want to like do kit bashes of, or do like non-custom versions of like Peter Parker or Tony Stark or somebody like that, like can be really profitable. But, you know, for the most part, I'm like not sure that like just buying a figure to do that is really a winning strategy in the long run. But that lightsaber hilt that I got kind of inspired me, and I've just wanted to, for the longest time, to get organized with all my extra accessories and stuff that I have. I had a bunch of boxes like stored in the closet area of my little L-shaped office space that just doubles as my collecting room. And a lot of the figures, accessories, and parts and stuff that I didn't want to keep in the box, I had put in like little plastic baggies, and it was in like a Tupperware drawer in my closet. And it just makes it impossible to like ever find anything. And I'm like, I felt like I mentioned this before, but it's like sometimes I don't repose a lot of figures because I'm like, I don't even know where the stuff is. And not like I'm lazy about it, but I'm like, the things aren't even that accessible to be able to go ahead and repose that. And then it led me to ask the question of like, okay, I'm going to start sorting these things. And I went out to Michael's, and for anybody, they're like a Hobby Lobby, like a craft store. And I happened to walk around, and they had some little plastic cases that were for like arts and crafts and stuff like that, and scrapbooking stuff. And they were all like half off last weekend. So I took 2 separate trips there. I probably could use the third, and got little plastic containers and stuff to kind of start sorting out figure parts and stuff. So they were more accessible, labeling them and making it a little bit easier to get things. But then as I was putting things away, Chris, I was like, these things, like I feel like if I was ever audited, like somebody ever audited my collection, I'd like, yes, I definitely have all the parts and stuff that originally came with this figure. And I've never taken one part from one figure and moved it to another. But like just getting that lightsaber from a different figure, I just felt like it, like Mel Gibson and Braveheart, like freedom. Like I felt like I could just like start putting things on. And like I've complained in the past about like The Force Awakens, Luke Skywalker has like big hands, and I'm like, well, why can't I just take the hands from the episode 8 one that I'm not using? And now that I had mentioned that, like Roy's like, I can't unsee his big mitts. So like but going back, I know I'm kind of rambling here, Chris, but just like each thing for each figure, looking at it and being like, am I ever going to display the figure with this? Is this something worth keeping? Is this a figure that I'm ever going to sell? Is this like a permanent fixture in my collection no matter what? Like it won't ever leave. And as I started doing that, I was like, there's a lot of things in here that I feel like we talk about often, about using your collection as a currency. And looking at some stuff on like eBay and stuff, I'm like, I feel like I've got, not like wasting money away because it's just, you know, they're little parts, accessories, or head sculpts and stuff. But I'm like, I wonder if there's a market for some of these things out here, especially things that I'm never going to do. So, Chris, I took that leap of faith. I started out with, and of all things, a Captain America shield from, I think it was MMS 174, which is Cap from Avengers 1. And he came with two plastic shields, one standard and one battle damage. Well, I'd bought that figure used originally, and one of the straps is broken off on the battle damaged one. I'm looking at it. I'm like, I could probably fix this, but like I just don't want to go through the effort of it. I'm like, I wonder if somebody, if I put this on eBay, if I could get like $5 or $10 for it, and if it sells, like that would give me even more incentive to figure like, okay, if somebody wants to buy like a broken part to fix it themselves, will they take non-broken parts and and pay money for that? So, needless to say, I've got like 20 auction items out there right now, Chris, and they're like, as we were talking about before recording, like we can't believe like how much some of the things are going for. Some of the things are more desirable than others, and as I mentioned, usually it's for like a kit bash of a Peter Parker, a Tony Stark, something like that. But then some of like the really obscure things too, like I think the most obscure thing that I had posted was the Infinity War Thor came with two sets of bare seamless arms, and putting them together as a set, like I think right now the current bid is like over $30 for those shipped.
Yeah,
Like I would
man.
never display that figure with those, and not that I don't think that they're good or anything. I prefer how he looks at the end of the film. So I don't know.
Yeah, it is specific items that definitely, obviously are more desirable, but like say with those Thor arms, I think the musculature of the arms is more beefy compared to some of the earlier releases. And I think a lot of collectors are, swapping those arms out. And that's why, and you're not going to see too many of them for sale. So you're going to get a few people bidding on them, and hopefully they sell for more. Some of the smaller accessories, it's really tough to move them, but anything like a rifle or a lightsaber, and those items, there's always a use for them, and you just kind of got to dictate what the least amount of money you want to take for them is.
Yeah, and
In
that
that way,
that's yeah, and that's a good point, Chris, because like I had no earthly idea like how to price any of these things. Because if you go to like sold listings and stuff, because they're out there so infrequently, it's hard to gauge like what a fair price is. And so I took a little bit of a leap of faith, and I listed everything basically. I think I listed everything at a base price of like $4.99 and with free shipping. So basically, for the most part, like that just would cover the shipping, and anything over that would then turn into, air quotes, profit. But I figured the market would kind of dictate things. I sometimes have a different kind of opinion probably than most on eBay. And if I put something on eBay and it doesn't do well, like that's on me because I made either a bad decision or just somebody at that time frame just didn't want it. But depending on how badly somebody wants it, like it's only worth what somebody's willing to pay. So I'm never usually a huge fan of listing something as a buy it now, unless I absolutely know it will sell for something like that, or I just don't want to go through the hassle of doing an auction. But like I said, I would have underpriced a lot of these things already. And I'm kind of glad that I did risk that. But it'll be interesting. It's a learning experience. Like that's one of the things out of this whole thing was just taking that leap of faith and being okay with the fact that I might not have like a complete figure. So I just got the new battling version of Captain America, and as I was putting parts away, I'm like, do I really need the same Chris Evans head sculpt for both of them? I'm like, I just spent X on this new figure. Why don't I just take the head sculpt from that and then put that on eBay, and then that will actually reduce the price of what I just paid for that figure. And unless I displayed both those figures with both the Chris Evans head sculpt at the same time, like I don't necessarily need two of those. And I even going through, I couldn't tell you, Chris, like how many versions of the Skywalker lightsaber I had and all my releases. I'm like, I think I can spare to sell one of them from one of the figures. Like I'm not displaying it with it right now. And, somebody out there might want it, or they may have broken theirs and they can't get a replacement from Sideshow anymore. And that's a good way to like fix a figure for their own. So it's extremely fascinating. Like I said, I feel like my eyes are more open than they were before, and I'm more willing to be less. It's almost not that I'm like OCD or anything, but I think I'm more willing to be okay with air quotes not having like a complete figure.
You look at it as your core figures that you collect that you likely will not sell. And that's kind of the items that I see that you're listing so far are items of figures that are probably going to be in your collection for a very long time. So it's like that is a more that's a good way of going about it and determining what you're willing to sell. And then of course, if you have multiple unused head sculpts that and you're not going to venture off into the the custom market or realm, so to speak, then it's just a way to recoup some of your investment into that figure initially. So yeah, man, I think it's a good idea to just, it's a good stepping stone to see how things go. And hey, maybe the sum of these parts will equal another figure. Who knows?
It's looking like that way now, which is kind of crazy. So, Chris, this won't be the last time we talk about this topic, and we want to hear from our audience, hear from our community group. We have email, sixscavengers@gmail.com. I've kind of made a pledge to myself. I'm just kind of fed up with Twitter recently. So don't try to reach me on Twitter. Instagram's probably one of the better spots. And I just feel like the collecting community is a lot more positive on Instagram. I feel like Twitter is more about fandoms and who's got a beef with what, versus Instagram is just like, hey, look at all this cool photography that I have. Look at all these cool figures and let's just appreciate them.
Yep. No, I agree, man.
All right, let's get on to our feature figure review. We'll be fairly brief on this because we're already this podcast is going way long. I had a feeling when we started recording this was just going to be something that I know specifically I was going to have a lot of anecdotes and stories and stuff to tell about. So I apologize if I'm being long-winded. Now I'm going to give you an opportunity to give my voice a little bit of a break here, Chris, because this is a figure that you have that I do not. As I mentioned, you brought the figure in the box over when you stopped by my place, and I had an opportunity to see this firsthand. So I will be able to offer some insight from what I recall about seeing it. And my memory's horrible lately, so bear with me on that. But our feature figure review of episode 15 is Loki from Thor Ragnarok. MMS 472, released on March 12th, 2018. Chris?
Yes. Sorry.
No, day one pre-order.
Oh yeah, it was a day one pre-order, man. I was really looking forward to adding a Loki figure to the collection. Just kind of going back to, he had a release for Avengers and for Dark World. A lot of people really love the Avengers version, but it's crazy expensive. So
like $450 plus.
Yeah, forget about it. Yeah. So I was definitely day one pre-order for this. This was going to be my one Loki for my collection. So yeah, it was. Let's see, you mentioned the dates there.
Yeah, so you got it. It was pre-order date of March 12th, 2018, shipped to you on November 30th, 2018. Mm-hmm. Retail price on this was $243, and this is still in stock right now, Chris, right?
Yeah, it's still currently available. So if you are looking for a Loki figure, maybe after our review, and then check out the numerous reviews online, I would say go for it. I mean, it's just initial impressions on this figure. It's a solid output from Hot Toys. There's not too much, we'll pick it apart a little bit here, but there's not too much left to be desired for this figure.
So let's start with the elephant in the room here, Chris, or the virtual room as we're talking across the state of New Hampshire here. It's the head sculpt of Loki, Tom Hiddleston, and I think this one is kind of unfairly bashed. And I think one thing that our group is really good about is just not necessarily being negative Nancy's. It's okay to be critical or provide constructive feedback and stuff like that. But then sometimes there's just hating something to hate on it based on an image that you see on the internet. And I feel like this figure suffered from that a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, this figure, it's just something about the way this figure is photographed in certain lights. It is not quite, the likeness of Tom Hiddleston. But man, I swear, when you get this thing in person, there's like no denying that it's Loki, it's Tom Hiddleston. I just don't. For me, it's good enough for me, and I'm not like sitting there dissecting a side by side image of him. Yeah, maybe I don't know, the brow of his nose is not quite as thin, or maybe his cheekbones, or it's nothing. I don't get into it like that. For me, this is Loki. It, especially when you put the helmet on, the horned helmet. I mean, you don't have to worry about a likeness issue there. And I wanted you to see it in person to get your opinion. That's why I brought him over. Cause
yeah, and I would agree with that too. Like, I looked at it, I'm like, I don't see what the big deal of it is. And like you said, we're not super hypercritical of head sculpts and stuff, as long as it has a reasonable likeness to the character. Like, for me, that's good. And we've had a lot of discussions lately about, these are still kind of mass produced figures. I mean, the insane detail that goes into painting one of these things, it can take weeks to paint head sculpt. So, the fact that it may not always be perfect. And I think a lot of the general Hot Toys collecting community is demanding perfection every single time out from Hot Toys. And I think we have to remember like what they are. I mean, it's a toy, it's a collectible, it's a high-end collectible, but they're not infallible. And I mean, to me, like, I had no concerns about this. And I actually changed my opinion of being kind of skeptical of it to just like, yeah, there's no real issue. It's one of those ones that you have in hand that you can definitely tell like exactly what's kind of going on with it. And then it's not, it doesn't have like the lighting concerns or any of that other thing that you would see for the figure that you see like online.
I would say don't have any hesitations. If you want to add another villain to your MCU or Marvel collection, I would recommend going for him. But yeah, so this figure, I don't know, 30 points of articulation. I can't, I don't go too crazy into poses and that sort of thing. But let's see, he's got 7 hands. He's got ones that are open. He's got one to hold the Tesseract, which is really neat. And he's got a couple to hold his daggers. And then, let's see, he's got a really cool cape. Flows really nicely. The way it drapes over his back and everything, nothing to be of concern. No concern there as far as the cape goes. Love it. And then as far as his overall suit, it's tailored nice and tight to the body. Just lots of layering, lots of detail. Black, dark green. He's got some added detail on his forearms. It's one of those suits that in the different lighting can hit it different ways, and it just gives it a lot of depth, even though it's just a bodysuit, essentially. That's what it looks like. But yeah, it's got a lot of detail there. 2-piece boots, which makes it nice for posing. The 2-piece boot, man, that's the way to go, opinion, for Hot Toys boots. And then, I mean, other than that, he's got his daggers, which are very sharp, so be very careful. I almost stabbed myself trying to put one in one of his hands. His signature gold helmet, it really does add that extra detail to him when he's got it on. Me being pretty anal, there was like one little paint speck on it when I was inspecting it, but it's on the edge of the, kind of towards the edge of the horn, so you won't notice it. just for me, just one of those little, no real fault to Hot Toys. It's just, a little dust particle gets stuck in there. And then, like I said before, the Tesseract, which is really cool, like little blue acrylic block with certain lighting filters and stuff, you can really make that thing pop. And then let's see. And then the big accessory is the pretty awesome orange Surtur skull from Ragnarok. And I love that. I love that character. It's obviously a key part of Ragnarok in the movie. But yeah, that was one of those things where I think it's got a different paint app, but I think it came with the Road-Worn Thor. And that was like one of those things before this Loki came out. I was like, oh man, I really want that accessory. But again, that Road-Worn Thor is forget about price. It's around $450 too, easily. But yeah, man, it's a overall, I really love the figure. I'm glad it's a part of my collection. I had fun today posing it up in the Lightbox, doing a couple pretty generic poses. Yeah, I can't wait to get him set up with Thor and Hela and all the other characters. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you got it. I'm glad I had a chance to take a look at it. It didn't convince me enough to break my focus of what I was looking to do, but I certainly appreciate that it's a good figure. So Chris, in the honor of keeping things lighthearted around here, so I'm having a debate with myself internally while you were talking there on what I was going to have you rate this figure on. I was going to say Tesseract. That would just be too easy. So I think we got to go with the Surtur skulls. How many Surtur skulls was Loki here?
I mean, these, ratings are pretty funny because most of them are 4 of 4, but I got to give it 4 of 4 because again, I personally, I don't need the face sculpt to be like 100% exactly like the actor. So for me, there's nothing else I could ask for with this figure. So yeah, 4.
Yeah, and just having seen it for a few minutes, I think for me, it would be like a 3.75 Surtur skulls. But I could easily have convinced to do more, but not that you were asking for my opinion at all.
Yeah. No, it's one of those ones where it's percentage points and we'll just round up to 4.
All right. So, Chris, we had a supersized episode this time, and hopefully our listeners enjoy that. It's that time of the show where we give out our plugs, not only for our stuff, but friends of ours that are in the collecting community. And that's one of our favorite things to do is shine the spotlight on others doing really good work out there. And we hope that if we mention them, that you have an opportunity to check that out. Like I said, we only do a couple podcast episodes, per month. Some of our friends out here are doing things more frequently. They've got YouTube channels and stuff, and it's just all part of that collecting experience. And to be honest, if you're listening to this podcast and we talk about 6-scale collectibles, Hot Toys specifically, you're probably going to want to consume other podcasts and stuff like this. So we do hope that you check some of these others out. So we have the website, 6scalescavengers.com. We're going to try to do a little bit more news-y type items there coming up soon with the help of some of our moderators, and looking forward to that. We have our checklist out there that we hadn't really referenced in this episode, that we have them from start to finish from the entire lines of Star Wars and Marvel. We have our TeePublic store where you can get our designs out there. Chris and I get a few dollars of each t-shirt sale that go towards our hosting fees. We have our Facebook page. We have a presence on Instagram. We have 6 Scavengers. Chris is on there as Vintage Viewport. I'm on there as Jedi Scavenger SW. And we have our YouTube channel, 6 Scavengers, that we're going to starting to ramp up some content there with these panelist hangouts that we're currently working on. We have our private group out there, 6 Scavenger Collectors. We'd love to have more listeners join us there. It's a great community. I'm biased. Make sure you answer the questions, though, because if you don't answer the questions, we don't know if you're a listener or not. So we might not be able to let you in. So if you have a friend or family member that you think would like to listen to the podcast as well, you can tell them we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, And sixscalescavengers.libsyn.com, where you can take that RSS feed, throw that in your podcast catcher of choice. So this section of the show, we talk about our friends out there. We have PJ, the Paradox Nerd, on his YouTube channel doing video reviews of hot toys and more. We mentioned him a couple times, but collecting weekly podcasts and YouTube channel. Zach, Dean, Jesse, Manny, and they usually have other guests as well. I'm biased here, Chris, but Zach just had an interview with Plastic Heroes and Villains from Instagram, also PJ, ironically, had an interview there about just his background in collecting, notably tips about posing and stuff. I highly recommend you guys go check out that bonus episode that Zach did, and go find PJ out there on Instagram and tell him you enjoyed the podcast as well. I was taking feverish notes and already feel like I need to go back and repost a lot of it's just I don't want to sell the interview short, and he's a very humble guy, but I would say definitely you got to tune into that. It was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Check it out. I followed him immediately on Instagram and kind of stalkerishly liked so many of his posts. So yeah,
I think we did get him in our group as well too. So it's great to have him there as well. And the collecting thing, the reason for the podcast, the reason Chris and I are doing that is we're out there learning, and we want to help others. And if we can help somebody out in any way, I feel like that we've had some accomplishment, some purpose for having this. And just talking. A couple more. We got Tashi Station, Full Scale to Six Scale Collectibles. They have a presence on a Facebook group. John Martino does a great job there with his admin team and moderators. And finally, a new addition, Ryan, we mentioned, with RK's collectible reviews. He's starting to do some more stuff on YouTube. As you mentioned, we just checked out his review on Thanos and want to see some more good stuff from him. So, all right, Chris, I think I'm done.
Man, yeah, I think we're both done. Time to go to bed.
Yeah, it's getting late here on the East Coast. So yeah, I just wanted to thank again everybody for tuning in to episode 15. We're already in the pre-planning stages of episode 16, lining up Doctor Strange. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more news in between there. So Chris, any other final thoughts?
No, man, good conversation. Again, check out the group. Lot more good conversations going on there. And just looking forward to everything coming our way shortly.
All right, Chris, bring us home.
Excelsior.